Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Sangha Live Daily Meditations. My name is Miles Kessler, and I'm joining you for this week of daily meditations. And the month of June, the theme has been on letting go. And for my week of practice, I chose a related theme on letting come, letting go, letting be, and letting grow, the four noble practices of the Buddha. And to start that, excuse me, we'll do just a momentary review of the Four Noble Truths. The very first teaching that the Buddha taught that started the wheel of the Dharma 2,500 years ago. And it's a wheel that is still rolling today in an unbroken continuity for some 2,500 years. Oh my God. And it all started with the first noble truth, dukkha satcha, the truth of suffering, followed by the second noble truth, samudaya satcha, the truth of the cause being the grasping and clinging nature of our minds. Followed by the third noble truth, the truth of cessation, or nirodha satcha, that when we stop the cause, we let go of the grasping and clinging. When that happens, I should say, suffering stops. Followed by the fourth noble truth, magga satcha, which is the truth of the path, that there is a path of practice that you and I and all of us are walking on that leads to the end of suffering. Oh my God. Isn't that wonderful? Those are the four noble truths. But the Buddha went on to teach, and this is all in his discourse on the turning of the wheel of the Dharma, the first teaching. He went on to teach with each one of these noble truths, there is a noble practice. And in relationship to that truth. So in relationship to the truth of suffering, the truth of unsatisfactoriness, our practice relationship is the noble practice of acceptance, letting come, acceptance. In relationship to the second noble truth of the truth of the cause, our noble practice is relinquishment or abandonment. In other words, letting go, the noble practice of letting go. In relationship to the third noble truth, the truth of cessation, our practice is the practice of realization, letting things be just as they are. The noble practice of realization, or the noble practice of letting be, which we'll talk about tomorrow. And in relationship to the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path, our practice relationship is none other than the noble practice of development, cultivation, nurturing, and letting the Dhamma grow. Indeed, letting the Dhamma flourish in our hearts, in our minds, in our relationships, and in the world. Isn't that awesome? You know, just think of that. One way to think of the turning of the wheel of the Dharma is that it's a wheel of awesomeness. That, oh my God, such a beautiful, wonderful teaching has been turning for 2,500 years because it's awesome. I'm sure the Buddha never said it's awesome, but, you know, sometimes I reflect on the profundity of the Dhamma and, my God, it's just awesome. So today we're going to be looking at the second noble practice, which is the noble practice of letting go in relationship to what? The cause of our suffering. And that cause is none other than grasping and clinging, the grasping and clinging nature of our minds. And as I said on Monday, we are all habitual graspers and clingers. And if we've taken on a Dhamma practice or a therapy practice or some type of spiritual path, some type of personal development path, some type of transformational path, Once we take a step, set foot on, and take steps on this transformational path, we are in grasping and clinging recovery. Hello, my name is Miles, and I am a grasper and a clinger. That is really kind of how it is. It's a bit of a joke, but not really. It's actually how it is. We're all in recovery. And the beautiful thing about the recovery programs, which I've never really, I have close people that have been involved with them. I've never been in them. But the beautiful thing about it is that it's all owned and it's all out front, out loud and proud. And that empowers them. That empowers people to work with their addiction or recovery or whatever the case may be. And by claiming, planting a flag, yes, I am a recovering grasper and clinger, and I am setting my feet on the path of the Dhamma. And I am failing miserably all the time. But I get up, I dust myself off, and I get back on the path. That claim, that declaration is a very empowering place to be. And that's what we're doing here in this meeting with Sangha Live. So the second noble truth the second noble practice is the practice of letting go. And then we're letting go of the grasping and clinging nature of the mind. And there's there's three domains we can look at this. Generally speaking, this is a loose model, but we're going to look at basically the third one. But the first place we can look at our grasping and clinging nature of the mind is in the world. And we could spend a whole month on how we're grasping and clinging in the world. We don't have to look far to look around the world and understand that all the suffering in the world that's happening right this moment has at its root cause the grasping and clinging nature of the mind. And the way that we relate to the world that causes us distress, the way that we relate to the events of the world that causes us pain, that causes us consternation, that causes us anger and ill will, that causes us to become polarized. Hello, my name is Miles, and I'm a habitual polarizer. Get empowered through saying that. That is all caused by the grasping and clinging nature of the mind. And this noble practice of letting go, in one way, we're not doing that today, but in one way is to practice letting go of our views, letting go of the grasping and clinging nature of our relationship to the world. And like I said yesterday or the day before, that it doesn't mean we won't act in the world. It doesn't mean we won't speak our truth in the world. It's just that habitual grasping and clinging nature that perpetuates karma, that perpetuates dukkha, that perpetuates pain and suffering that we inflict upon each other. That we're going to work on letting go. We're going to take it on as a practice. Number one. Number two is, and number one, we're not working on that here today. That's not what this meeting's for. Number two is relationships. The people that we relate with in the world, those people that are in our circle, and those people who might be outside of our circle, but we still relate to them. Why are they outside of our circle? Because they don't deserve to be in our circle, whatever excuse we may give. What is our grasping and clinging nature in relationships? Close, medium, and far. Reflect on that right now. Where are we grasping and clinging in relationships? That's not what we're doing here today. That's not the practice that we're doing here today, but we're bringing this practice into a reflection for this moment on how that manifests in relationships. Where do we refuse to let, where do we not let come? Where are we not accepting in our relationships? Where are we clinging on to and holding on to the views or beliefs or people or property or whatever, material, ideas, politics in our relationships, and how is that serving our relationships? Is it causing more? Is it the cause of the perpetuation of karma? Is it the cause of another round through samsara, another lap through hell, so to speak? Yeah, so this grasping and clinging nature of the mind, which we're going to look at here, we're just taking a moment to reflect on how that also is in our relationships, not just in the world, but in our relationships. That's the second place we want to do this practice. The third place, pardon me. The third place we want to do this practice, which is really the first place, is inside of ourselves. Hello, meditation. Hello, purification of the mind. What is the grasping and clinging nature of our minds? I don't know if you can see this. My teacher, Sadhu Pandita, when I first met him in Burma in the year 2000, 1990, 98 or 99, I don't know. 1998, actually. When I first met him in Burma in 1998, one of the very first teachings, if not the first teaching that he gave me, like personally, in a personal meeting with him, was that he said 100% of the suffering in the world has its root cause in the mind. 100% of the suffering in the world has its root cause in the mind. So if we look around the world, far, medium, and near, if we look around the world and see, oh my God, there's a lot of suffering, unhappy people, pain, and receiving pain, inflicting pain, suffering in the world, my God, it all has its root cause in the mind. And our practice in Vipassana meditation, you could even say in all types of Dhamma, all types of Buddhist meditation, in other transformational paths, other traditions, but certainly in Buddhism, the root cause of suffering is the essence of it all is in here. And that's where we begin our practice, in here. And we start to observe, we start to recognize, we start to acknowledge. That's kind of the acceptance part. You know, like in therapy, before you can change, before you can transform, you kind of have to admit that there's a problem. You have to acknowledge, oh yes, right, yeah, I'm an alcoholic, or whatever the case may be. Oh yeah, I have this issue. It's true, I have this issue. Then and only then can the real practice begin. Now, a lot of practice can be done up to that point, but the point, the kind of the come to Jesus moment or the come to Buddha moment is when we stop and we say, oh my God, yes, I am a habitual grasper and clinger. Oh my God. And we recognize this grasping and clinging nature of our mind. And that we just don't let go. Joseph Goldstein tells this beautiful story of the monkey trap, which you can Google it and you'll see. I think it's in Africa, where some of the indigenous cultures, they had a way of catching monkeys, and they would take a gourd or a hole in the side of a cliff or whatever, and it's a small hole enough for the monkey to get his hand in. They put a piece of fruit or a goodie in there and make sure that the monkey could see it. So the monkey would reach in, grab onto that piece of fruit, reach into the hole, grab onto the piece of fruit, and then where he got his hand in, when he grabbed, it became much fatter, and he couldn't take the hand out of the hole because he's holding on to the piece of fruit. And then the monkey hunter would just come along, and the monkey is going nuts trying to escape, but he won't let go. And then the monkey hunter catches him, and goodbye, monkey. I don't know, maybe they made him a pet, maybe they made him dinner, who knows? But the grasping and the clinging nature of that monkey led to its demise. We are all monkeys. We're all kind of hairless apes in that sense. And we all have the same grasping and clinging nature. In fact, we are neurologically wired to grasp and cling. The root cause of all suffering has its nature in the mind, which is not material. It's immaterial. But you could also say the root cause of suffering has its nature in our brains, because we are neurologically wired up for decades and decades and decades, in my case, 61 years of grasping and clinging has led to an interesting neural net of grasping and clinging. Now, in a deeper state of meditation, that might all let go. But the fact is, those neurons are in place. But thank God we have, neuroplasticity. Or as the Buddha said, the mind is shapeable. We can change the shape of those neurons with mindfulness practice. With mindfulness practice, not with concentration practice, with mindfulness practice, it actually brings about a transformation in the mind. I shouldn't say without concentration practice. Concentration practice also does that. But mindfulness practice is what purifies the mind. And one way to look at that purification is that it changes the brain. Rick Hansen, neuroscientist, Dharma teacher, says that, as a beautiful saying, we change our minds from grasping and clinging to letting go. We change our minds to change our brains. That's the neuroplasticity part. That's the shaping of the mind part. We change our minds to change our brains to change our minds. So we go from a grasping mind that creates a grasping brain that creates a grasping mind, a circle of misery, to changing the mind, which changes the brain, which changes the mind, a circle of wholesomeness, a circle of awesomeness, a circle of liberation. I'm looking at my notes. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the time. I'm trying to see what would be the best to do. So letting go, it's important to understand how we don't let things go. And often not letting things go is based on not letting things come. When we don't want to yesterday we were talking about letting experience come. If we're having a hard time of letting experience come, it's usually based on some grasping and clinging. Letting an experience come is usually there's something unsatisfying that's coming into my experience, and I'm going to either try to control it or escape it or manage it or deny it. It's all kind of normal moves. God bless us all. But not letting it come means that we don't really want to let go of the state that we're in. So not letting go equals not letting come. Not letting come equals not letting go. There's kind of a closed loop there. But some of the ways that we don't let go in our practice is some idea that my practice has to be this way or that way. Like I have to be in the right room to practice, or I have to have my right shawl to practice, or I have to have the right cup of tea next to me to practice, or I have to have the right lighting or the right soft music, or it has to be this way or that way. And those are all good things. They're wonderful supports for the practice. Do not misunderstand me. By all means, have suitable conditions. Not suitable. Favorable conditions. Preferable conditions. By all means, have preferable conditions, but don't be attached to those. Any moment is a moment for practice. Any conditions are conditions for practice. So notice if you have a tendency for not letting go in the external conditions. Internal conditions also we don't let go. And that would be primarily, when it comes to our meditation practice, that would be primarily the 5 hindrances and the way that we relate with the 5 hindrances. I'm not going to go into the 5 hindrances here, but just know that when you sit down and meditate, when you activate mindfulness, you're activating a developmental process, and part and parcel of that process is these defense mechanisms of the mind are going to come out. An unwise way to relate to those hindrances is assume that something's wrong with the practice, or that they shouldn't be here so I can practice. Actually, no, they should be there. They're not bugs, they're features. Desire arises, then let it come. Don't indulge it. Don't resist it. Don't deny it. Just be and be with it, mindful of it. When aversion arises, let go of any ideas about how things should be and let it come, and let go into that moment. Differentiate your awareness and observe. Sleepiness, restlessness, it's the same. Doubts. I cannot tell you how many times in my own practice, absolutely, but also how many times when working with, Many, many yogis, they come in and tell me in the interview, this and that, and behind I just hears a doubt about this method, a doubt about the teacher, a doubt about the sangha, a doubt about the practice method, a doubt about the Buddha, a doubt about maybe I should go do some, I don't know, some other meditation, whatever. And that might actually be helpful. I'm not suggesting otherwise. Or doubt about themselves. Self-doubt is probably one of the biggest self-sabotage moves we can have in the meditation. And should any of these arise, just remember, I am walking a higher path of practice, and it is going to require me in a moment of truth, to pay attention to my grasping and clinging of the mind, to pay attention of how I am not accepting an experience, to let experience come, and to, with faith and patience and perseverance, to practice letting go. And just notice on a very, very basic level that the grasping and clinging is a self-contraction. The grasping and clinging is, there's a contraction happening somewhere in our mind. In the mind, non-physical part, there is a contraction. Check right now. Is your mind in any level contracting? The source is in the mind. Downstream of that, you'll feel it in the body. You'll feel a kind of tightness or tension, whatever, coming up. And that's all normal. And if there's tightness and tension arising in the body, if the breath is becoming restrictive in the course of your practice, let it come. Let go of any ideas. If you're like, if you, let's say you're angry or something about whatever happened, and then your body starts to tense up because you're angry, the moment you become mindful of the anger, it's like, oh, okay, I differentiate from that. And all that tension is just going to melt away. I'm sure you've had that experience. Okay, count to 10, breathe, whatever, and then it all just melts away. Other time you'll be in a very mindful place, just observing the breath or the body, whatever, and then the breath becomes restrictive, not because of the mind, because of the mindfulness. As I move through a certain phase in my practice, tension arises in the body naturally. Let that come. Let go of any idea to change it. If it's overwhelmingly uncomfortable, then do a little breathing or stretching or whatever you need to do. Self-regulate and self-care is fine. But ultimately, we have to let the process roll. We have to let the process roll. And then that's where I'm going to end this talk on letting go, the noble practice of letting go. And I'm going to end it with a centering thought for our practice. We have our agendas in the practice. And they could be wholesome agendas. They could be kind of subtly off. They could be unconscious. But the fact is, we have our agendas, and the Dhamma has its agenda. We have our agendas, and the Dhamma has its agendas. We have some notion of how our practice should unfold, wherever we got that notion from, a book, a teacher, another person, whatever we brought it into my practice. It's often unconscious, but it's there. My practice should unfold like this. And the Dhamma is going to unfold the way that the Dhamma is going to unfold. And quite often, our agenda and the Dhamma's agenda don't match. Which one needs to let go? The separate sense of self thinks, oh no, the Dhamma's got to change. But it doesn't work that way. We have our agenda, the Dhamma has its agenda. And our practice is moment to moment to let go, let come, of course, but let go into the nature of the experience, no matter how pleasant or pleasurable it may be. The noble practice of letting go is being present in the present moment and being with what's arising. Should a self-contraction arise, simply by being mindful, differentiating your awareness and being mindful of that self contraction, it will begin to change because it is conditioned. And that change might become more intense for a few moments, but then it might even start to release, and eventually it will change and disappear because all phenomena, physical and mental, physical and non physical and non-physical phenomena in the universe is conditioned by the universal nature of change. Let go into change. Okay? Let's find a comfortable position. Just introducing once again this centering thought. We have our agenda in the practice, and the Dhamma has its agenda. Our job is to let go into our experience moment by moment, breath by breath. Bringing your attention to the body, noticing the conditions of the body. As you observe your experience, notice that the mind is differentiated from and observing the nature of your experience. Shifting your attention to the mind and knowing the condition of the mind in this moment. Is it more relaxed? Is it more contracted? Is it more open? Is it more closed? Is the mind sharp and clear? Is it a little fuzzy and cloudy? Whatever the conditions of the mind, simply being mindful with differentiated awareness, know the conditions of the mind, and let go into the experience. And shifting your attention to your home base, your primary object of practice. In my case, or in many people's cases, it's the breath, but it doesn't have to be. But I'll speak about the breath. Bring your mindfulness to the breath. And notice the precise physical sensations in the movement of the belly and abdomen as you breathe in. Notice the precise physical sensations in the movement of the belly and the abdomen as you breathe out. Noticing the qualities and characteristics. And as you gently rest your mindfulness on those characteristics, with open awareness, allowing more detail to come to the mind. Letting go into the experience with each breath, in each moment by moment, breath by breath. And bringing your mindfulness back to the body, feel the body. And as you feel the body, know that every moment is a moment for letting go. Bring your mindfulness to the mind. Know your mental state. And as you observe your mental state, know that every moment is another opportunity for letting go. And now shifting your mindfulness to the inside. And as you slowly open your eyes, coming out of the meditation, being mindful of the space on the outside. And take a few moments to come out of the practice. So before I take some questions, just a few reminders. If you do have a question, please put it, or a comment, please put it in the chat. And it's helpful if you write the word question in all caps before your question, then I can find it easier. Oh yeah, Dana. Dana is the first of the 10 spiritual perfections, and it means generosity. It's that spiritual perfection of generosity. The highest form of dana, as I mentioned the last few days, is whatever degree of dhamma has awakened within your heart and in your mind, is to be generous with that, with others, and with the world, and with yourself. That, of course, is a spiritual dana, spiritual generosity. But as from spirit, so above, so below, from spirit to material, dana is often donation, or just being generous with whatever resources that we have that we can share with those who don't have. And that can manifest in many ways, but one of the ways it manifests here is to support Sangha Live for all of this beautiful work that they're doing. And as I say every day, I'm with you guys front stage, but I see a bit, 2-3 times a year, I see what's going on backstage at Sangha Live, and they're doing really wonderful work. It's a very professionally run organization. George and Faith and Martin are the people that I know, that I'm in touch with, but I know there's more people involved, and they all work with open hearts, but they take their resources to give to Sangha Live, so that needs to be supported, plus the platform, plus etc. So I put the donation button in the chat, and just remember, we support the Dhamma. The Dhamma supports us. When the Dhamma supports us, we support the Dhamma. Another wheel of awesomeness. Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments or criticism that you might want to bring onto the stage here? I finished the talk I gave with a centering thought, And while I'm waiting for any questions that may come up, I finished. And by the way, if somebody wants to ask a question, they can come on stage. Okay, so there's a couple of questions. Good. So I'll just finish what I was saying. I finished the talk I gave with the centering thought to go into our practice, and this is something that can really take you very far in your practice, and it's always applicable. So just as a reminder, we have our agendas. The Dhamma has its agenda. Take a deep breath on that one. Okay, so Heidi and Jeffrey and Philippa have a question, and we have about 8 minutes. Let's see how far I can get. Okay, Heidi says, I enjoyed discussion today about neuroplasticity. I wonder if you or the Sangha have any resources, signposts to look at the experiences of neurodiverse autistic people in a Buddhist context, please. I find my mind is at times either much more flexible, more rigid than others expect, and causes issues in relationships. Currently letting go feels like letting go of the need to be a socially connected creature. Well, that's a pretty in-depth question. I don't have any. Look, the book that I can recommend is a book called The Buddha's Brain. I don't think he goes into neurodivergence or autistic spectrum on that one, but I'm sure you can find it. And I'm going to defer this to anybody in our group that may have a resource that you can share with Heidi. Please put it in the chat below. And in terms of letting go, currently feels like letting go of my need to be a socially connected creature. That's fair enough. Yeah, those. And here's what I will say about that: that practicing the Dhamma takes absolute truths, like the truth of suffering and the truth of the cause and the truth of letting cessation, the truth of the path, or some absolute state like mindfulness. And it puts them in contrast to relative experiences, like our need to be socially connected. One might argue that that's a universal, I would say it's a universal need, but is it an absolute need? I don't know, because we come from a place that's, who knows where we come from. We're here for a while, then we're going to disappear. That's something that we do need in life, but I sense that that's a little bit downstream of more absolute experiences. My point is, when you have two truths that are in contrast with each other, that create a dialectic tension, which I hear in your question, that there's a kind of dialectic tension, which one, that's actually fertile ground for practice. That tension is not just a struggle. That tension is the truth of dukkha, and it is also the evolutionary tension for your growth. So let that come into your life. Let that come into your practice. Let go of any grasping and clinging. And when the answer comes, and it will come, you'll be available for it. Okay, that's the most I can say right now in this context, Heidi. Okay? I hope that was satisfying. But we're a bit limited with just this format here. Jeffrey, thank you for your generous teachings, noticing the possibility of letting go of an overly fidgety mind this morning. Oh, that's a reflection. Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. That's fantastic. I had the exact same thing. Towards the end of the practice, towards the end of the period, I was like, oh, hang on a second. My mind keeps going to this one place. All right, practice what you preach. Let go. Beautiful. Thank you. Not Jeffrey. Excuse me, Janie. Thank you, Janie. Philippa has a question. She says, when I observe the in-breath, I am aware of effort and the mind kicks in with, am I up to this? Do I have the resources? That's a fair question. A theme in my life can feel panicky. I guess I can feel panicky. The out-breath is such a relief, and it feels as though I have to do anything just to allow it to happen. Any helpful thoughts? Yeah, Philippa, this is it's a good question. So the in-breath is tight or effortful, and the mind kicks in. Can I do this? Do I have the resources to go through this? And there's a sense of panicky. This is coming up in the course of the practice. First, I should say that the breath is going to go through so many changes over the course of your practice. I don't know how long you've been practicing, but if you look back, it probably wasn't always like that. It's like that now for a little while. In the future, if you practice mindfulness in an effective way, that's a whole other talk, but it's going to process through to something else. Yeah, as you move through the stages of insight knowledge. What you're describing here is kind of common at certain stages in the practice. It's to be expected that there will be tightness in the breath. It's to be expected that there will be some feeling of restriction. And that tightness in the body, the breath, restriction in the body and the breath is also tightness and restriction in the mind. It's and that's where you see that it is actually Dhamma. It's actually the true nature of things. Um, the panicky thing kind of says that you're hitting a kind of a borderline there, and you want to just get to know that borderline really well, and work skillfully with it. So if you need to regulate that down, then back off. Remember, it's the mindfulness and concentration and the effort of holding your attention on the breath that's causing that. Nothing else. I'm going to say that again. It's the mindfulness, concentration, and the effort to kind of stay with that that's causing that tension and rigidity and effortfulness. It's not a bug of the practice, it's a feature of the practice. Skillfully work with that. Yeah. And remember, it's not just in the body, it's also in the mind. It's the same thing that's coming up. The rigidity of the mind is coming out. Let that come as much as possible. Practice letting go and have faith that you will move through it. And if you feel you're hitting an edge there that you just don't really think is healthy to go past, back off the practice. Reduce the mindfulness, reduce the concentration, regulate a bit, and then once more into the breach. You will pass through. Everything you want in your meditation practice is on the other side of these experiences. And there's a lot more experiences to face as you're going through along the path. And maybe the last thing I'll say about this, Philippa, is that every moment we spend facing these things, working with these things, we're developing our spiritual resiliency. We're developing the spiritual powers. The unwholesome mental states in our mind are purifying and reducing, and the wholesome mental states are growing and strengthening. Wholesome mental states like mindfulness, wholesome mental states like energetic effort, wholesome mental states like joy, wholesome mental states like bliss and composure of the mind, wholesome mental states like concentration, wholesome mental states like equanimity. The 7 factors of awakening are being cultivated in your practice. I hope that's helpful. Okay, we might go a couple of minutes over today just to address this question. Sinclair says, the most recent eye surgery does not seem to have worked, and I cling to the serious implications a lot of the time. How can I manage this more skillfully? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Sinclair. Old age, sickness, and death. This is the bottom of it all. The Buddha said, and it's hard to hear this sometimes, but the Buddha said, there is no security in life. There is no security in life. And that's a little bit of the hard truth, the tough love in a way. Definitely give yourself some compassion if you need, but in the end of the day, we're all going to lose those things. And the practice of acceptance of the true nature of reality, the practice of letting go or relinquishing or abandoning or holding on to what's changing will lead to a deeper realization. And that deeper realization will keep us going forward on the path. And I know that probably for your situation, that's probably very inadequate what I say, but what else do we have? And of course, all the medical things you can do, by all means do that. And I wish you well in your practice, Sinclair. Yeah, that last question, Julie, I tell you what, I'm going to save your question for tomorrow, and I'll bring it in, or the next day on Thursday, and I'll bring it in first. Okay, just because we've hit the time. Reminder that tomorrow we will be I won't be doing questions tomorrow. I'll be doing a hot seat interview. So if anybody wants to come up on stage with me or on screen with me and do an interview like we did yesterday, you'll be very welcome. If you're curious how these interviews go, you can go to YouTube and look at the replay for this session. Sangha Live has a YouTube channel. Go to the end of the session from yesterday. You'll see the interview that I did with Natalie. So it's going to be something like that. Okay, and that's it. Tomorrow we'll be looking at the third noble practice of letting be, and Friday we'll be looking at the noble practice of letting grow. Last thought, we have our agenda, and this actually might, Sinclair, this might be something for you to reflect on as well. We have our agenda. The Dhamma has its agenda. Where those two agendas do not meet, we suffer. And with that, may we all be able to do the noble practice of letting come. May we all be able to do the noble practice of letting go. May we all be able to do the noble practice of letting be and the noble practice of letting go. And may those four noble practices lead us forward on the path, forever and always forward in our practice. Thank you, everybody.